Chapter 8. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman the Jews' enemy unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears, to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter towards Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king, and said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come upon my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hands upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews, as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring, for the writing which is written in the king's name, and sealed with the king's ring, may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time, in the 3rd month, that is, the month of Sivan, on the 23 day thereof, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded, unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and the deputies, and rulers of the provinces, which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing, and according to their language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by posts on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the posts that rode upon the mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree went, the Jews had joy and gladness and a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. We see here that the king gives Haman's house, it says, what it really means is his estate, everything that Haman had, to Queen Esther. And she, in turn, gives it to Mordecai. And then she makes a request. She falls, holds on to the king's feet, tears come, and he wants her to stand up. He holds out the golden scepter to her, and he tells her that she can have whatever she wants. She asks for a reversal of the king's edict, that the Jews be killed. How can I, these are my people, how can I see this happen to them? Well, there's only one problem with that. No edict of the king of the Persian Empire can be reversed, not even by the king. This was some sort of a check and a balance thing to make sure that the king was not hasty in doing things. Obviously, this one had been. But he couldn't reverse it. But what he did was, he took off the ring that he had given to Haman, which was the ring of authority, the signet ring by which the people who got documents would know that it was from or authorized by the king, and gave it to Mordecai, thus elevating Mordecai to be second only to the king in the entire nation. And said, although they couldn't reverse it, they could write however he wanted to make it as good as it could possibly be. And so Mordecai called the scribes in, and they sent out letters. And the interesting thing, of course, is if you had been the satrap, or the governor of a province, and you'd received a message a couple of months before letting you know that the Jews were to be killed on such and such a day, and then all of a sudden you got another letter telling you that not only weren't you to kill them, but they were entitled to defend themselves to the death against anybody who would attack them and take the prey, spoil of these people's homes, families, whatever for themselves. All of a sudden, you as the governor would get an interesting message. You would say, these people went from being at the bottom of the totem pole to really being at the top of the totem pole. And you would have heard that all of a sudden, the guy who is number 2 isn't this Haman guy anymore, but this Jewish fella. Uh-oh. And so, basically, there were a lot of people that became Jewish because the fear of the Jews. I mean, there was a political thing, right? It wasn't a religious conversion. It was a political thing. The Jews were on top. Hey, we're Jews. You betcha. Yeah, well, just really righteous conversion right here, right now. But that's how it went. Be interesting to see how many of those people actually stayed Jewish all of their lives.